Hi, and welcome to Story Time. It's the month of February, and it's the deep part of winter, and I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it in a heaviness. I'm feeling it in a sense of overwhelm and just, I want the hard things to not be so hard. I'm willing to do hard things, and I know that I can do hard things. I just want a little break. So my intention for story time today was to come and talk about inspired shift. That's what I love to talk about. That's what I love to do. It's what I'm good at doing, which is facilitating the transition between what we've been doing that perhaps is no longer working or not serving, and that which we're here to do, our life's work. So there's a couple of reference points that I go when I'm feeling disconnected from my own inspiration, from my own sense of empowerment to direct my inspired shift. And the first of that is the serenity prayer. I'm not a particularly religious practicing person, but as a yogi and as a raised Catholic, the faith in the greater energy and purpose of all things does resonate with me well. And so let's pause and listen to the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So in other words, we're asking for serenity, courage, and wisdom. Well, Confucius shares something somewhat similar. He says that there are three methods that we may learn wisdom. First is by reflection. Second is by imitation, which is easiest. And third, by experience, which is the most bitter, or as the translation says, which is the bitterest. I think Confucius would agree with the serenity prayer in that we need serenity, we need courage, and we need wisdom. But it is wisdom that helps us choose which of those other qualities and strengths that we need to call upon in the moment. So in all of this preparation and reflection, I just had this wave of overwhelm wash over me in the sense that I know my work. And it requires so little motivation to do my work. And yet that doesn't make it easy. And it doesn't make the day-to-day, particularly in the gray of winter, easy. But there is a difference between life being easy and life having a sense of ease. And it's that distinction that does bring me some comfort, even in my own suffering, even in my own I just don't wanna days. So coming back to this question of, is it the serenity, is it the courage, or is it the wisdom to know the difference? I think for me right now, it's the serenity that is most missing. And is serenity the same as ease? Perhaps. And yet I think it goes beyond the momentary sensation of ease and the greater scope of all is well. And that's what the yogis teach as bliss, as ananda. So how does this relate to my own teaching, my own life's work of inspired shift? Well, I think that is it right there, in the sense that when we decide on something, when we're ready to shift, we go for it, right? And there's a sense of clarity, there's a sense of purpose, there's even a sense of inspiration to do the new thing. But sometimes, more often than not, that transition is not a 180-degree shift instantaneously. It's more of a slow coming about, right? Think about how quickly the Titanic didn't turn, right? When it sees the iceberg. It didn't turn quickly enough because it's just too big. And sometimes that's what life is like. It's just too big. The culmination of all the things that I've been doing, it's going to take some time for things to shift. It's going to take some time for all of that work to come into fruition, to reap the benefits, to know that the effort of showing up and doing the things was worth it. Last month I talked about karma and how it's the natural and logical consequences of what we've done, right? When we talk about inspired shift, we're not talking about instantaneous results. We're talking about what do we want to do so that when karma comes to find us, we get what we're looking for. And the biggest challenge to that process for me is that there's a gap, there's a window, a delay. And it's in that gap where we have the most important opportunity to regulate what we think and what we allow ourselves to believe. That gap is where change happens. Because it's through that conscious change that we can embrace the shifts that are in our best service, that are in alignment with our authentic selves. So what does it mean for shift? To shift is defined as to move or to cause something to move. Even if it's just a slight change in position, direction, or tendency. Now I have a tendency to show up in lightness, in levity, in joy, in laughter. So having a hard day does not mean that that's not my nature. It just means that this is also true. This is part of the process so that I can live in more joy more days than not, or at least some days. When I was looking up shift in the dictionary, it also alluded to shifty. It's how interesting it is that shift, something that I think is so important and valuable and within our control, right? To live well is to shift. But to be shifty is the exact opposite. To be shifty is to not be our authentic selves, to not walk our talk, or to speak our truth, or to do as we say we will do. So I don't want to be shifty, but I do want to facilitate and to cultivate shift. Because shift is a mindfulness. Shift is in alignment towards something. And even when that pause between the decision and the benefits, maybe it's 30 seconds, right? Maybe it's more like 100 days. That's what the research shows us, is that when we commit to a new practice, the benefits of that practice don't start to show up until 90 to 100 days later. And that's if we're successful in doing that new practice consistently and well. I don't know about you, but most things that are new for me, I don't do well, and I certainly don't do all that consistently. Therefore, when we get to day 100 and things still haven't happened like I think they should, the temptation is to give up. The challenge, the wisdom says, if it's in our alignment, we keep on keeping on. But we ask for help, but we rally support. We take a step back and gain perspective. Or maybe we even take a day off to rest, to recuperate, to fill our cup so that we can overflow in doing the work that we're here to do. The shifting, the loving, the living. In the meantime, we have to practice that sense of all rightness, enoughness. We have to remember and remind ourselves and call upon our circle of friends and support to help us remember when we are perhaps sliding the other direction. So what does that mean? It means for me that we have this construct, this mental construct, that shift happens in an instant. And sometimes it does, right? When there's a catastrophe, when there's an accident, when there is, something outside force that really spins us around and sets us off. But those kinds of shifts are far fewer than the everyday shifts of incremental change or slippery slope slide. So I'm thinking about all the ways in which we shift and all the ways in which perhaps we've had to transition. Some of the shifts that I've helped clients through in the sense of a new job, same profession, same career, but needing a new workplace environment, needing a new team. I've also helped folks shift their careers, leaving one industry to another, much like I have done a couple of times. I've also helped clients transition, and have done this myself as well, in becoming a parent and then becoming not so much of an active parent, more of a stand and wait parent of young adult children. And eventually, myself, like many of my clients, will transition to that empty nest syndrome as well. But there's also those that I've helped transition through their own fertility journey, coming to terms with what they hope and what they expected pregnancy to be like or not like, and what was their reality, whether that was in the birthing process, whether that was in the getting the pregnant process, or whether that was even in how they built their family. Some of the other areas that shift is really prevalent and common and has been powerful for me to use and to implement the inspired shift strategy has been those who are in transition with their relationships, particularly their intimate relationships, those with their partners, their spouses, or families of origin. As we get clearer and clearer about who we are, as we know ourselves better, that can create some dissonance with those with whom we're in relationship with, especially if it's not who they think we should be. Additionally, I have found that inspired shift is helpful in the transition for those who are overcoming bad or harmful habits, and namely even addictions. Because in overcoming habits, right, in overcoming things that are part of our routine, it's not just the decision that happens, I'm done with that. It's now a behavior that we need to learn to not just not do that thing that is harmful, but often to cultivate a healthier response when circumstances would normally push us towards that addiction behavior or that harmful behavior. And so it's one of the reasons why every day we begin again. We're not starting over, but we begin again based on our experience, and hopefully we've cultivated these three components of accessing wisdom that Confucius says, right? So our ability to reflect, our ability to imitate our guides, our teachers, to do what we're taught to do. But fundamentally, it's through our experience, which then goes hand in hand with our reflection, which might even be facilitated by a teacher, by a guide to help us with that process, to see it more clearly, that we can come to wisdom. And it really, really is that sense of alignment with wisdom, of knowing myself and knowing what is, that is the ultimate ease, the ultimate understanding of ananda or bliss. So I guess perhaps the story today is to be gentle with yourself, to do the things that you know help, and to do the things that you know need to be done. But let everything else just ride. But there's also a component of knowing when you need to ask for help. And I can say to you that I've reached out 3 times today to 3 different people who know and love me to say I'm having a hard day. To confess that showing up is going to test me today. So that's the story. I showed up. And it's enough. And I'm going to keep on doing the things that I know are mine to do, my life's work. Because it matters. The people that I serve and support, my family, my friends, they count on me to show up. But more importantly, they love me. Who are the people that you can count on? And if you are still cultivating those relationships, then focus in that area to nurture and to be authentic for yourself and ask for what you need. But remember that these are processes. This is a transition. And I got 50 some years. I got a Titanic that's pushing me forward. And fortunately, I've done a lot of work to know who I am and my alignment and what I'm here to do. That doesn't make the hard things easier. Yes, it makes me remember and it helps me to have a circle of support that I've cultivated. But it's not easy. It's not easy to show up. It's not easy to be me. It's Kermit the Frog. It's not easy being green. But it's who we be that matters. What are you expecting to shift? And perhaps within that expectation might be the pain point that causes the suffering. Whether that suffering shows up in a temporary or even a permanent sense of quitting, or a self-flagellation of doubt and fear or shame or guilt. We all have our habits that help us wrestle with reality. And it's the wrestling that is important so that we can get to the point of clearer seeing. But wrestling for the sake of wrestling is just exhausting. So yes, inspired living and specifically inspired shift is rooted in this idea of cultivating alignment so that we can have access to wisdom, or what I call the witness perspective. But all of that pursuit of wisdom is for nothing if we don't first start with a foundation of compassion and self-care in community. Thanks for letting me share from my heart today. Thanks for letting me show up just as I am. I hope you can find the courage to show up, to do the things that are hard, and to let yourself be seen for your authentic, beautiful self. May you breathe deeply and move freely. May you labor lovingly and live vibrantly. Namaste.